Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to everyone here today for the Wildlife Observatory Australia Introduction to WildObs webinar. I'm thrilled to be here, and a welcome and a good afternoon. Before we get started, I did wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which I'm speaking here from today, and that is of the Ngunnawal people here in Canberra, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and the future. Indigenous knowledge and the way that we handle Indigenous data and be inclusive of Indigenous understanding is very important to this project, as well as the function and the program that I am proud to run of the Planet RDC. So, as a matter of that, if people wish to add to their chat their respects and the lands from which they come from, they'd be warmly welcome as part of this introduction. I'm Hamish Hollowell. I'm the director of the Planet Research Data Commons and a champion of the Machine Observations Data program, in which this initiative, WildObs, directly falls. And this is about our commitment and extending the scope and the capacity of Australia to meet environmental changes, monitor our environment, and understand how that is changing. It's absolutely fantastic here to be opening up the WildObs introductory seminar, where we'll hear a lot about what WildObs is doing, what the plans are, and what the future is as well. The AADC Planet Initiative is an NCRES initiative, and there is a logo here. AADC is enabled by NCRES that you can see on the screen. For those that are unfamiliar with what NCRES stands for, it is the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. And what NCRES does is it supports research infrastructure that is of a scale and of a benefit to multiple users and multiple researchers across Australia that is bigger than one university or group of universities. And that's where WildObs sits really neatly into that platform and that collaboration and that strategy. Its mandate of NCRES is to deliver that infrastructure through collaborative enterprises, which the government implores us to do. And once again, I think this project really truly exemplifies that partnership. In that partnership, I really wanted to acknowledge the collaborative effort of all the partners in the design and delivery of the WildObs program, and that includes the lead of the Queensland Cyber Infrastructure Foundation, QCIF, the University of Queensland, the Terrestrial Ecology Research Network, TERN, the Atlas of Living Australia, ALA, Bush Heritage, as well as the Queensland Government and QUT in this program. Australia has some of the unique and most fragile biodiversity on the planet, yet tracking that status is difficult, particularly due to the scale and the vast size of Australia. And traditional methods have been invaluable, but they struggle in scale and scope. And this is where WildObs really kind of comes through. In the machine observation program, we're working with WildObs and camera traps. We've got an ecoacoustics work, and in the strategy and roadmap, we talk about other modalities of observation, including drones and DNA mechanisms. But here we are to talk about WildObs today, and it's to answer the challenge of how do we scale this work? How do we combine the data that's collected by a plethora of very talented and dedicated professionals across the country to give a up-to-date dynamic picture of Australia's environment and biodiversity? Before concluding, I just wanted to also recognise two key groups. One is the National Governance Committee of the Machine Observation Data Processing Program, which is chaired by Professor Glenda Wardle. They've provided enormous insight and expertise into how we run this program and how we deliver it. So that's very much appreciated and welcome. And there's been much progress made against that roadmap and against that strategy over the 2 years from our initial workshop, as you can kind of see in this picture in this slide, back at QUT and UQ in 2024. I also really wanted to thank the hard work and dedication of the actual team, led by Jenna Wraith and Matt Lutscombe and Joe Morris from AADC. And this is building this community for everyone and for Australia's benefit and our environmental benefit. So, over the next hour or so, the team will walk through all the core features of WildObs, demonstrate how we can contribute data, how it's actually used, where the needs are. And I look forward to this presentation. And thank you for all being here today. So, let's begin. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Hamish. And one of the things that I've enjoyed most about the process of watching WildObs emerge and grow is it truly is a co-design approach. So at every single step, we've had people from government, many different academics, many different NGOs, state, federal, and local government, all contributing what they need, what are the tools that will improve their job, and how they can really benefit from this. So it's really not a approach that is an ivory tower approach. It's a pragmatic approach. We're building essentially a startup that services professional biodiversity researchers and people in the actual collecting data on the ground. So I think we can discuss today how these tools are going to help you as a new user. Um, and hopefully you'll provide us with feedback about how we can change it to make it better into the future. So here's our agenda. I'm going to start by explaining how our different products and services save our users time, money, and increase impact. Then we're going to talk about how a single user might experience that, and that's going to be done by uh, Colin from Bush Heritage. Then we're going to dive into how our different suite of products and services are integrated. So you have a whole workflow, a pipeline that takes you through your process where everything is really efficient, data standards are consistent, and your job becomes much quicker and more impactful because you can provide the data in the right format at a larger scale and you can increase how much you're doing. That's going to be done by Jenna at QSIF. Then we're going to dive into some of these specific products and services, and that includes our image management system that's cloud-based and powered by supercomputing from Enquist. And Zach's going to give us the overview for that, and Zach from Turn. And then we're going to go over how we share data, our terms of service, and that's going to be done by Renee. Renee's based at QSIF and UQ. And then we're going to go into how you can access this data right now. And so that's our detections, our wildlife detections database. That's again going to go back to Zach, and then we'll have time for questions from you. So cameras are one of the most scalable biodiversity technologies in the world. They're being used everywhere in countless different applications. So much creativity going on, and Australia really is at the forefront of this. So Australia is one of the groups that, or one of the places where cameras are being deployed at the highest rate. So there are at any given time many thousands of cameras observing our environment in Australia. But processing all those images is difficult. It's slow, it's expensive, and even when it's done, the data is often siloed on someone's computer on a hard drive. That person gets a new job, it's even forgotten about. And that's a real big struggle because almost all these projects are funded by the government, public taxpayer money, and a lot of these have an obligation to share their data. And they want to, but there is nowhere to share your data right now for camera trapping. So we are also lacking really good tools and resources to process this imagery at scale and draw inferences. We have offline storage, which is just risky because these hard drives are failing or getting lost, inconsistent formats of data. So even if we can share, the one user can't understand exactly what the other user did because the data standards are different. And then also to run analyses on this large amounts of data, you often need supercomputing. And so access to that is not always consistent across Australia. And all this really matters because we need data to monitor for conservation and for research. And this includes everything from moving from traditional species distribution models, just like what are the extent of where a species is, to detection corrected occupancy and abundance models. So we can actually track trends in species abundances and how they're doing. And this can flow directly into the tools that Australia uses to monitor the environment, like the Threatened Species Index, the state of the environment, and other government reporting. So, what does this efficient pipeline look like? Well, it starts when you're in the field when you're collecting your metadata, you have guidance on how our best practices for setting your cameras. You can set your cameras different ways, but you're collecting metadata that describes how you're setting them different ways so that a user later on can look at that data set, understand what you did. So we're working with DQ to have a smartphone app. And so that already you just enter the data as you're collecting it on your phone. It goes straight up in the cloud and it sits there waiting for your images to later be linked to that. So images, that's probably where we spent the most time right now. And so we need a cloud-based image management platform that does all the things of many different programs like time lapse and all these different little pieces here and there that are run separately, integrated into a system where you don't see anything. It just all works perfectly and seamlessly. So we've built that in partnership with Akuti. You upload your images, you tell it which models you want to run, it removes your blanks, it finds where the animals are, it classifies each one of those animals, and then it provides a really intuitive interface for you to verify what you want. Like, oh no, that's the wrong species identification, it's the wrong number of individuals. Then that data is exported in a consistent format back to you, where you can immediately run a variety of analyses in different R packages or using even easier tools like EcoCommons Jupyter Notebooks. So it makes it really accessible for you to analyze your data because the data is always coming out in the exact same format. That also means when we want to share data, so for example, let's say you have a ARC grant or a government grant or a government project, and you need to report. Your data is in the perfect format for all that reporting. And if you want, you can click a button and we'll submit your reports for you. So it just makes that whole pipeline super easy, consistent, and it means everyone can start sharing data in the same format so we can start doing larger analyses. You know, a single site can tell you a lot, but comparing that site to a nearby place that might have a slightly different management or may not have had such a severe fire, that's where really powerful inferences can be gained. So finally, we want users, including people at government, academics, maybe even internationally, to be able to say, how is Australia's wildlife doing? Where's the data? What's your evidence? So we're building data portals that are really intuitive for you to explore and then download if it's chosen to be a public data set. So to kind of summarize what that is, we're building a scalable, integrated system to support your biodiversity conservation research when you're using cameras. This is really going to just 10x. I mean, we're already using it. It's just 10xing your efficiency, lowering your costs, allowing your limited staff to focus on other things that they want to do. And it really is a platform. So we're hosting not just our models that we're running for our AI, for training AIs in specific regions, but we're also hosting all the models from ADX AI and from AWC 1 through 5. So we're a clearinghouse where people can come to share the tools that they're building, completely open to everyone. And you can use our tools outside of our system. So if we build a model, that a computer vision model that you want to use, we have that publicly available. You can download that and use it in your own system. So it's really plug and play, interchangeable. We provide the whole overview if you want it, but you also have the option to pick and choose which things are going to be suitable for you. So who are we building this for? Well, we're really thinking first and foremost about our government users because they're the ones setting the most cameras. But second, we have some really impressive work from our NGOs, from AWC, from Bush Heritage, from WWF. So those are a huge stakeholder for us. Our research community is huge here in Australia. A lot of camera trapping going on, actually funded via universities in one way or another. And then environmental organizations, including consultancies, can use this product as well. And that's really great because they often have an interest in sharing data, but don't know how to do it. So there's a variety of different tasks that we've broken this down into, and that includes enabling coordination and collaboration. So you know who else has sampled that national park. You could send them an email and say, hey, I also want to sample over there. Or you can find people who maybe have done an experiment with fire. You can find those people, connect with them, hopefully improve your outcomes. Image management. We've discussed how that worked already. Access to many data sets. This is going to be really powerful, even for things like the state of the environment reporting. We're offering different training opportunities. So this is not just how to use our services and products, but also in statistics generally. So you know what inferences you can draw from these data sets. And then we're actually producing analytics. So users will get a standard report that describes their species, occupancy, abundance, habitat associations that will come back to you. as a standard reporting when you use our system. So for most people, that's probably all you're going to need. You don't have to go out and hire a statistician or find or bother your ecologist in-house unless you have a specific question beyond those general reporting. We described our mindset about why we thought WildObs was necessary in this review paper that includes 170 Australian authors. You're welcome to read that. It's like 25 pages, goes into a lot of detail, but I think we summarize a lot of the key points in this talk. So I encourage you to go here, but uh, yeah, long process. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to one of our partners, Bush Heritage, and Colin, who's going to tell us about their experience with cameras.
Hey, thanks, Matthew, and hi, everyone. My name's Colin Broughton. I'm a conservation systems developer with Bush Heritage Australia. I'm part of the team that's helping our ecologists and reserve managers and other on-ground staff with their mapping and data management. And I've got a special interest in camera trapping. And for the last few years, I've been working on improving our camera data pipelines. Part of that has involved building our own tools and models, but also leveraging a growing array of camera trap software that's becoming available. More recently, I've been contributing some of my time to working on WildObs, and it made a lot of sense for us to focus our limited resources towards the development of a shared platform. Some context for camera trapping at Bush Heritage. Most of our conservation reserves have a large array of cameras, usually operating continuously at designated monitoring sites. And we get really valuable insights from the cameras. This informs our adaptive management and also scientific research. At the moment, we're capturing around 5 to 10 million images every year. That's probably an underestimate. And this has been steadily increasing over the last few years for a few reasons. One is we have a push towards non-invasive or lower impact monitoring methods, also taking the opportunities of automation and scalability that comes with these technologies. And also we're increasing our footprint, so more land acquisitions. A bit of context around our adaptive management. One of the key questions that we're always trying to answer is, are our conservation actions working effectively? And if not, how can we improve them? A typical example of that is if we're running a feral or invasive species control program on the reserve, is this having a measurable impact on those species such as cats and foxes? And in response to that reduction, are we also seeing an improvement in, say, the population of small mammals in response to that reduced predation? Also, for our day-to-day reserve management, our reserve teams are always interested to know, can the camera trap data show us, say, hotspots of feral activity so that the reserve teams know the most effective location to go and undertake those control activities? So we've put a bit of time into thinking about what matters to us. The first thing is we need really well-designed monitoring programs and the data pipelines that are able to answer our management and research questions. We also need a really fast turnaround time between when we capture the data and when we get that analysis result, informing our decision making and making sure we can do that in a timely manner. And we want to make really efficient use of our people, and that includes staff, volunteers, contractors, and other collaborators. And we want the ability to scale up, so get more cameras out there, get more data coming in, really high resolution and deeper ecological insights. And ideally, we'd like to share more of our data for the benefit of science and conservation. In simpler terms, we want to do more camera trapping, so scale up. We want to do it more effectively and also faster, cheaper, and with higher accuracy, and sharing more of our data with others. So why are we looking at WildObs? So for us, the AI species recognition is a very powerful, amazing technology that is immensely useful, but for us, it's one part of a larger puzzle that we're trying to solve. And what we really need is a fully featured software platform that supports our camera data pipelines and helps us to achieve these adaptive management objectives. So some of the key features that we're excited about in WildObs is tools that enable us to really systematically and efficiently review and validate the AI-generated predictions, ensuring we've got that human oversight to ensure accuracy and scientific integrity. And we also need the software to support the way we work, and that would often involve workflows that have teams comprised of staff, volunteers, contractors, and other collaborators. And through the software, have the ability to implement really strong governance and project management. And also tools making it easier for us to contribute our valuable images. We've got cameras running in ecosystems all around Australia, and we really want to contribute those images to the advancement of the machine learning models and to make sure those models are able to accurately detect the species that are important to our monitoring. And we also want tools that that make it easier for us to implement data standards and be able to contribute more of our camera observation data to scientific research. And with that, I'll hand over to Jenna.
Thank you, Colin. That's great. So before I dive into what our infrastructure looks like, I'd first like to highlight that our Project WildObs is an incredibly collaborative program. Like Hamish said, we work across multiple organisations. My team at QCIF, which is a non-for-profit for digital research and infrastructure, is the lead organisation, and we have an incredible team of software engineers, data scientists, and computer vision specialists. And we have our research lead sitting at UQ and TERN, and our key partners with ARDC, TERN, Push Heritage, and ALA, as well as collaborators and partners across the Queensland, New South Wales, and federal government. And we really couldn't build what we're building without all the expertise of our team and our partners. So the WildObs platform has been built, and we're currently in the testing phase of our system within our team, our key partners, and some external users, which is very exciting. And the system itself has three key components. The first is the image platform, where a user will come and upload your images for analyses. The second is the database to standardise the data. And the third is our mobilisation of data to other national repositories. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these components. So as a user, you will first use the WildObs image platform. This component was built with our partners at Agouti in Europe, who already had developed some really great infrastructure and were kind enough to share it with us and work with us to make it available for Australia and on Australian servers, which is a really important sort of aspect for many of our local users. This component here is where you will upload your images from either an SD card or from your computer for analyses. And the first step here is to apply a broad image classifier like megadetector to identify blanks, people, vehicles, and animals. For images that actually include animals, a more specific computer vision model of your choosing will be applied. So we have Renuka on our team, who is a computer vision specialist, and she's developing a series of models that are location and habitat specific. At the moment, we have one for the wet tropics and Gari, and she's working to develop more, and also on a national model as well. These models are available on Hugging Face already, so you can check those out if you're interested before launch. We're also working with collaborators such as the Australian Wildlife Conservancy to incorporate their models into our system. So you might have seen their webinar on their new model recently, and we're really excited to have just integrated that into our platform. Our next step as a user is to validate the species tags. And once you're happy with those, because you can validate them, you can change them, but once you're happy with them, the data is then annotated and stored in a database. Our database is growing rapidly. So far, we have over 350,000 independent mammal detections from over 12,000 camera deployments that were active for over 650,000 trap nights, which is huge. And this has captured over 3.5 million images of over 500 species. Of that, there are around 100 mammals. This means that WildObs already has nearly 10% of Australia's terrestrial mammal occurrence records from 2015 to 2025, and this is continuing to grow really rapidly. And one of the most important components of WildObs is our interoperability and sharing data with other national repositories. We aim to have the largest mobilisation of camera trap data in Australia, and we are well on our way to do this. Our survey data is going to be shared and made available on TERN. Our tagged image repository for those interested in developing your own computer vision models is hosted on the ALA, as well as occurrence records. And because our data is incredibly important for long-term monitoring of species trends, the data is also going to be shared with the Threatened Species Index, the State of Environment reporting for mammal health, the Biodiversity Data Repository, and also be interoperable with other national platforms, for example, EcoCommons, which can be used for species distribution modelling and occupancy modelling. So I'm now going to pass on to Zach, who is going to dive in a little bit more about the platform.
Thanks, Jenna. Hi, everybody. My name is Zachary Amir. I'm a data scientist working with Tern, and I'll be presenting our image platform on behalf of one of our software engineers, Mohammed, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. So, why would you be interested in using something like our image platform? The basic idea behind this platform is you can store your images and videos from your camera traps online and use an AI tool to process them into these perfect spreadsheets that are usable for analysis and sharing with other organizations. What's different about our model? There are a couple of existing platforms that you might be familiar with, such as Time-lapse or Wildlife Insights. So similar to Time-lapse, we offer multiple different AI models, but everything is based in the cloud, and that allows us to take advantage of NCRIS research infrastructure. We also offer a flexible approach. So while Wildlife Insights is all cloud-based as well, they only offer a single model. So we are offering a much more flexible yet similar approach to Wildlife Insights. In addition to that, we can work very collaboratively. I'll highlight some of the different user roles that we have. As I just mentioned, we have access to NCRIS supercomputing facilities, and you're able to choose from multiple Australian-specific AI species classifiers. All of this media is backed up twice, and we facilitate easy data sharing through the Atlas of Living Australia, Tern, and our in-development WildObs web app. So, how to use the image platform. The workflow will start by logging into the platform. You can create your own username and password, or if you're with an official organization, like a government organization or a research university, you can use the Australian Access Federation to log in. Once you're logged in, you can see all of your different projects. Since we are still in a testing phase, you'll see all of my projects still have test in the name. But you can think of a project as its own set of unique contributors, project level metadata, such as how you actually set the cameras, the descriptions, motivations for those projects. And those also capture your data sharing agreements. So if you want to keep this open or partially shared, that will all be captured per project. So if you're running many different camera trapping projects, this is a great way to keep them all organized. And for this example, we'll look at our most recent testing session from early December. This is the project overview page. It includes a map, an interactive map of where all your camera deployments are, a representative image if you want to include one. And you can also see on the left-hand side, we have different pages that we can navigate through the image platform, which we'll go through in a moment. You can see that there's an add deployment button, which will let you add or edit individual deployments. But one really neat feature that Mohammed has implemented is bulk uploading both deployments and media. So you can submit your deployments as a CSV file that matches our template, and that will autofill hundreds of deployments in seconds. We also offer integration with Nextcloud, which is a cloud-based media syncing service. So all of your camera trap media between your personal computer or hard drive or wherever you're storing it from the field will be synced with this online image platform. So to dig into some of these tables, we have the deployments table, and this will capture everything about your camera settings, such as how high it was placed, what angle, what camera brand, that sort of stuff. You can also see which cameras need annotations. So in this example, a small portion of the images were not successfully identified by the computer vision model, and it's giving us a prompt to actually annotate those images. You can assign these to collaborators, and we can also see all of these empty text boxes here. We can filter the table on certain conditions, which makes navigating these tables really easy. We also have our species table, and that's going to include all possibly available species from the project level computer vision model you selected. However, we know computer vision models won't capture every single species we see, so there's easy functionality to add new species if we observe them. We can also see how many observations and deployments have detected that certain species. So even within the image platform, before we export any data, we can get some interesting and useful summary statistics about our species detected. Now, the page that we'll probably spend most of our time on using this platform is the observations. And just like all of the other tables, they're completely indexable by these search filters on the top. And we can see here that there is the created by column, and that denotes if the identification was made by the computer vision or it was updated. So we can see on these bottom three rows here, I've actually reviewed these cassowary identifications and validated them. So say there's an example where we only wanted to search unvalidated images, we could check those and rapidly go through them. I'm pretty interested in this first detection here, Hypsiprimnodon moschatus, so I can click the little edit button on the side and a pop-up window will appear. For anybody that's familiar with this critter, Hypsiprimnodon moschatus, you can know that this is indeed the right critter. It's the musky rat kangaroo from North Queensland. If I wanted to, we have this box to edit the observation. You can add behaviors, individual identifications if you're doing that. In this case, I would probably just mark validated and save the observation because the computer vision model was correct. Next, we have our project settings page, and this is where you store a lot of that project level metadata, sampling design, descriptions, data sharing agreements. And within the project, we have a bunch of different settings that we can establish, such as behavioral classifications, tags for different individuals within a species that we're identifying, tags for individual deployments, or grouping deployments together. I also want to highlight our users profile here. We can see there's a number of different roles, such as admin, principal investigator, view only, photo processor. Additional roles include volunteer, contributors, taxonomic expert, and all of these come with different levels of access to the project. So someone with the view only role is not going to be able to edit any of the observations. As we've mentioned earlier, we have access to many different computer vision models. In our project level settings, you can select which computer vision model will automatically annotate your images. And currently we have 6 models. As Jenna mentioned, the AWC 135, SpeciesNet and Megadetector is essentially the same thing on Wildlife Insights. And then we have our fine-tuned models of SpeciesNet, the National, GARI, and Wet Tropics model. Since all this data was from the Wet Tropics, I obviously selected that model. But now that we can edit our individual observations, we can actually compare different computer vision models for specific images. In this instance, we have a pig in the image, and Suscrofa is the Latin name for pigs. I wouldn't necessarily want to reanalyze this one, but I have another example that's worth noting. In this image here, it's a critter that many people in North Queensland would probably be familiar with. This is the giant white-tailed rat, and we've chosen 2 different computer vision models to analyze this image. Oops, slide. We can see here that we have the 2 different identifications. The first one, Rattus rattus, is from our WildObs national models prediction. This is the model that's compiling data from across mostly the east coast of Australia. But then we have our regional species or regional specific model, the Queensland Wet Tropics model, that has a much more narrow set of species to choose from and better training data from those regional specific species. So this really just highlights we have access to the benefits of both national and local computer vision models. Finally, I just want to highlight it's super easy to export data. There's an export data tab on the left-hand side. And you just select the download button and you can get a copy of the spreadsheets that are exported out of the platform. But I also highlight that this data flows automatically into the WildObs database. All the data sharing agreements are retained and all the information I just discussed, projects, deployments, observations, media, all that information is accessible via the tables you're able to download. And with that, I'll hand it over to Renee to discuss our data sharing terms.
Thank you, Zach. Yes, I'm Renee Piccolo. I'm an ecologist at the University of Queensland, and I'm going to briefly talk about the WildObs data sharing terms. Our terms define how the data can be used, accessed, distributed, and distributed between the data provider and the data users. In simple terms, they set the rules of engagement. They clarify who can use the data, under what conditions, and for what purpose. At WildObs, all the data must be covered by a permissive license, and this ensures we follow the FAIR principles. That is, that data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Licensing is really important because it provides legal clarity. A license such as Creative Commons license tells others what they can and cannot do with the data. So essentially, licensing protects the data provider while enabling reuse for research, conservation, and policy. We recognise that not all data sets can be shared the same way, so WildObs offers different levels of sharing. Our first option is open data, and this is our preferred option. It means there's full open access to metadata, images, and detections. It's publicly discoverable with DIY. It's best for transparency and reuse, and all sensitive species locations are always obscured. When data is open, it allows more researchers, organisations, and managers to use it, which can lead to faster insights and better conservation outcomes. Our next option is partial sharing, and that's only metadata is made public. This is useful for data sets and projects that need careful handling, such as Indigenous groups. While we prefer open data, we understand that some data sets require different considerations. When it comes to sensitive data, WildObs has adopted the same policy as the Atlas of Living Australia. This means sensitive species, locations, and information is obscured. The goal is to reduce the risk while still enabling appropriate use. We also allow temporary embargoes, such as 24 months, while still allowing metadata visibility. This allows researchers time to publish and projects to finalise reporting while still making metadata visible so the dataset is discoverable. I'd also like to extend an invitation to Indigenous groups to discuss if and how we might consider data sharing and under what conditions, and the responsible reuse of data. So please feel free to reach out. And I'll pass it back to Zach to talk about the WildObs database.
Thanks, Renee. Yes, and hello, everybody, once again. This is primarily my focus in developing WildObs, so happy to speak about the database. I want to just bring up the problem that Matthew mentioned earlier, this issue of siloed data. I began my PhD sorting through many different SD cards manually, and every now and then we are rewarded with a really interesting and awesome sequence like this, the Patty Melon punch-out from the wet tropics. But more often than not, we're dealing with blank images, and it's a huge pain. But when we are actually able to get this data together, it can be really valuable and inform a lot of research. However, when we ask the camera trapping community where they're actually setting cameras versus what we're actually able to find in published literature or databases, we found that there are way more data sets out there in the world that are not accessible. And this highlights the fact that there is siloed camera trapping data in Australia. The solution we're proposing is the WildObs database. And a key attribute of this database is that we aim to return more than is provided. We provide all of our data in a standardized and consistent structure. We're able to receive data from SD cards straight from the camera or legacy spreadsheets following whatever bespoke data standard you've used in the past. And we're able to apply many tests and tools to integrate that into our database. All the data is contextualized and enriched, so we define every data set with a spatial temporal camera trapping survey. And for every single deployment, we also calculate a range of over 20 different covariates calculated with 5 different spatial buffers around each camera. And that's all included with DOIs to the covariate locations as well, so you can analyze the data right away. Finally, only validated high-quality data is published and sent to our database. This is because I've written over 40 different quality assurance and quality control tests that all datasets have to pass before publication. Fortunately, anybody can share camera trapping data. We're in the steps of finalizing our easy-to-use legacy data submission tool. Essentially, it's a survey where you go online that facilitates a crosswalk from whatever bespoke data standard you've used in the past to our internationally recognized standard, CamTrap DP. After the data has been submitted, this initiates a 5-step data curation pipeline that enhances the data, as I just briefly mentioned. And on these nodes, you can see some of the tests and corrections that are done to the data. I just want to highlight that this pipeline is implemented across UQ's Bunya research computing infrastructure. So this enables us to ensure we scale effectively and efficiently. So we can access the WildObs database right now if you want to. We've developed an R package called WildObs R. It's accessible via GitHub on this QR code here. The package is still in development, so it hasn't been sent to CRAN, the Central R Archive Network, just yet, but it will certainly be there by the end of the year. I'd also like to highlight that we've recently partnered with EcoCommons to demonstrate how to run detection-corrected occupancy models using data collected from the WildObs R package. So all of this data that we've just talked about that's openly accessible, you can run occupancy models with it right now by following this tutorial, and this QR code will take you right there. For those that are a little bit less coding inclined, we totally understand and anticipate the situation. So we're developing a web application, and this is an old mock-up we've made from the ideas we've had about this web application. It will essentially compile all the data sets with a nice interactive map, and you can zoom into specific projects such as some of our camera trapping from Gari and see a brief summary and have access to download that data as well as tables that you can then do whatever you're interested with. So if you're interested in getting involved, I'd say the best thing you can start doing is start asking research questions or management questions to query our database using the WildObs R package. This sort of thing is ideal for research students, NGOs, and adaptive conservation managers. I'd also recommend it'd be great to sign up to our newsletter. You'll be the first people to access the WildObs database web application. And if you have legacy camera trap data that you're just sitting on, you've used it, you don't know what you want to do with it, we would love to get that published and accessible and useful for other researchers as well. And finally, with that, I'd like to let Matthew conclude our session.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted. All right. I'd like to finish by just reminding everyone that these tools are already in development. The beta is live, but we're publicly launching it on the 1st of June. So leading up to that, we'll have some more webinars. And then right after that, we'll have proper workshops and training sessions so that we can onboard everyone to the system. Really want to thank all of our collaborators and sponsors. This project started through hosting multiple workshops where people from many different organizations came and told us what they want, what's working, what's not. And the only reason we were able to build something that we think is going to be really useful is by soliciting all that information. So I just want to thank everyone who's engaged so far. I mean, honestly, it's been hundreds of people. I hope our outcomes are going to meet your needs. There's some updated things that you can look up. So at the website, we have an FAQ, so you can learn much more. We have a way for us to engage with you directly through an expression of interest. And if you want to be up to date on our newest products, services, publications like that come out, you can use any of these QR codes, and they're also going to be linked in the chat. And that is it. So I also just want to send a personal thanks to the team. What we've been able to pull together in under 2 years since actually initiating this is pretty remarkable. I think this, I don't think, like having worked all around the world on many of these very similar initiatives, this effectively leapfrogged Australia from being really far behind in the sphere of wildlife monitoring, biodiversity monitoring at scale, leapfrogged, I think, right to the front. So I think this is actually going to inspire a lot of other people, organizations, countries, and even larger groups to get involved, and hopefully we can be a leader moving forward. Cool. So we're going to open up to Q&A, and I'm going to let Jenna kind of direct that.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so the first question we've got here, I think maybe Matthew, it's probably for you, is how is the WildObs platform different from existing wildlife insights?
It's such a good question. So some key differences as a user that actually matter for you is that our computer vision models are going to perform way better for you because what we did is we started with SpeciesNet, that's the Wildlife Insights model, and we fine-tuned it to only Australian species. So it performs much better in a pragmatic sense. Number two, if you're a government user, all the data in Wildlife Insights sits in America, usually in California or in servers, and it's controlled outside of Australia. So that doesn't meet some of your reporting standards and some of your data sovereignty standards. So everything that WildObs does, hosted on Australian soil, built on Australian infrastructure, meets every single criteria that you need to use it. Another thing that I like is we have a much easier bulk upload system. So WildObs is really built for professionals using camera traps. I never used a camera trapping survey with less than 10 cameras. Often you have dozens and dozens of cameras, maybe even hundreds of cameras. For people in the field, being able to bulk upload when you get back makes such a difference. So that process being really efficient, I think, is another big one up. Uh, we also offer the ability to compare different AI models as you go. It's number one, it's just really cool. Number two, allows you to fine tune what you want to use for your site so you can test out different ones and figure out what works best for you. I think a related question is why is WildObs platform better than time lapse? Um, so first of all, there are different tools for different applications. If you're an Australian researcher doing your PhD overseas, I would suggest using Wildlife Insights. We don't we don't cater to that at all. And let's say you don't have internet whatsoever at your site. Okay, then you're probably going to use time lapse offline. But for anyone who has even a mediocre internet connection, the ability to process all your images on supercomputers is just so much more efficient. Clears up your computer for other uses that you can have fun with. You can have many different users at the same time. So on time lapse is offline. You can't have 10 people working on one single project efficiently. Uh, yeah, the reason we spent years developing this is to solve all these issues. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a great question, though. And also, I would like to just acknowledge the people at Wildlife Insights were so helpful in helping us develop what we want to develop. Like they're really collaborative. They understand the limitations and that Wildlife Insights is not for everybody. So huge shout out to them and to Dan Morris, their main developer, who's helped us at every step. Also, a huge shout out to the time-lapse people in ADX AI. They're providing their models, expertise. We're working closely with them. Just it's a great network of people, and it's more about choosing the right tool for you as opposed to one always being better or worse.
Thanks, Matthew. Another question, which maybe I'll answer, is there a plan for audio devices on the platform? And I'll just add that one of our sort of sister projects in the same ARDC program is the Open Eco Acoustics. And there is plans in our future iterations to be able to sort of link across platforms to be able to integrate data better. So in the future, yes, that will be an option. Okay, let's have a look at some other questions. Okay. Sorry, just going through the list. Maybe a question on how do we address AI classification errors before processing for occupancy? Is that something, Zach, you might be able to answer?
Yeah. I'm very happy to answer that. There's a couple of different approaches we can do when it comes to handling AI errors. The first is we can export the confidence that the AI model has and include that as a detection level covariate in our occupancy models, if we're so inclined to do that. However, I would recommend first actually reviewing some of the more suspicious classifications on the image management platform. If you can correct inaccurate identifications and manually validate them, that's A, ensuring humans are kept in the loop as part of this image processing pipeline. But B, you also have a better understanding of how the computer vision model is identifying maybe some suspicious or tricky edge cases. So say you have two similarly looking species, you identify that one of them is consistently inaccurately identified. You can then zero in on those labels and just review those ones as just one step to make sure you're getting accurate identifications. So while the AI models really rapidly speed up the processing time, so far there is no smoking gun that will get 100% correct all of the time. I'd be surprised if there ever is. Maybe, we never know. But I would always recommend to review at least some of the computer vision identifications.
Great. Thank you, Zach. Maybe another question for you too is, does our data have persistent DOIs?
Yeah. So all the data that is shared through the Atlas of Living Australia is also published with GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. They mint a persistent DOI for each data set. But that is only associated with openly shared data. Now, for all other data, such as the partial data sharing, we create our own persistent identifier. We're working with one called RAID, which is something to summarize a research project, something that can easily take updates as well, especially as data is changed through the image platform or recurated in a different way. So the RAID is a little bit more flexible, persistent identifier approach compared to something like a DOI. And part of this includes creating an attribution guide to understand how to appropriately attribute and cite this data, whether it's accessed through GBIF with a DOI or through the WildObs web application through the RAID.
That's great, Zach. I'll just add that for a lot of people, they might not be interested in publishing like an academic paper, but they are interested in getting credit for the work they've done. And publishing your data set and having a DOI associated with that goes on the resume and it can be cited, and people can then reach out to you to invite you to participate in future projects. So it really is, selfishly often a good choice. It's also often, way more often, I think people um, realize it's a government regulation if you're taking publicly funded projects, especially through certain agencies. And um, we are at WildObs are not enforcing any of that, but we are enabling people to meet those criteria that they are technically legally obligated to do. Without we're not gonna we're not gonna tell on you or anything. We're just gonna make it easy. But that is, reporting is part of the job oftentimes. A third thing is for those of us that do have fun writing papers and doing research, this is a great opportunity to get your work shared in larger papers, whether it's long-term monitoring papers or whether it's comparing different sites or looking at biodiversity trends, across ecosystems, habitats. And so, being part of the community and sharing your data often means you're part of cool projects and meeting cool people. And I've actually found it really enjoyable as we move forward with these big projects, having collaborators from many different backgrounds and sites all working together to try to answer some questions. So there's a lot of benefits to engaging, even with your legacy data, contributing that, being part of the community. It's been really enjoyable for me, and I think others would find the same.
Great, thank you. There are a couple of questions about our capacity or our plan to develop new models for other species or for areas that currently aren't, maybe working so well in the current models. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So we are developing models already based on our users' needs and based on where people have shared really good tagged image collections. So, you know, the first thing you can do if you want a model trained is to work with us. We have a tutorial on how to produce a tagged image collection that we'll then use to train a model. And so that's step one is work with us to produce the underlying, what we need to train a model. Number two is to reach out to us and tell us that there's a demand. Um, because a lot of the time, what we're going to do is redirect you to our collaborators. So for example, if you're in Victoria, Victoria just has a new model that's produced by edX AI. We're friends with edX AI. They're going to make their model available on our platform. So we would say to you, don't invest in that right now until you talk to these other people. And that's part of one of the main roles we are as a platform and clearinghouse is to make these connections so that people aren't working on the same thing. They're really communicating and working together to achieve these outcomes way more efficiently because it's not cheap to train one of these models. If you have a really edge case scenario and you want your own model trained, we can do that. We often need to pull in extra resources and we'd have a discussion about how that would happen. If it's a really widespread use case, then we'll probably work with you to make that happen organically. We want that. We've been asking people, please give us images from Western Australia. We want to train a model for Western Australia. And then we actually already have a model coming from Western Australia in the south. but we want to do one up in the Kimberley. So now the south is going to be handled by our partners at AdX AI, and northern Western Australia, the Kimberley region, I think we'll train that model. There's a big demand there. So yeah, step one, curate your images and share them with us so that we can even consider training a model. Step two, tell us that there's a demand. We'll connect you with the right people. And step three, we'll have a discussion one-on-one to make that happen.
Great. Thanks, Matthew. The next one will be for Hamish. And this question is about, are there specific policies about handling culturally sensitive data and working collaboratively with First Nations communities?
Oh, thanks, Jenna. That's a great question, actually, and very important question. WildObs is part of the Planet RDC program of work. One of our focus areas is on the governance of Indigenous data, so that it includes both free, prior, informed consent procedures. How does data get handled? How does that get governed once they're in systems as such? So, as part of the Planet RDC, all Planet infrastructures, as well as the National Earth and Environmental Science facilities, have been doing a project which is called Governance of Indigenous Data, which is looking at some of those policies, some of the governance mechanisms, and how do you start to implement that within your systems to ensure that there's inclusive participation and the appropriate handling of that data. So that is a program that is will be run through with WildObs and other infrastructures to appropriately handle those and have an inclusive process and procedure there. So yes, Jenna, working on it.
Fabulous. Thank you, Hamish. Thank you, everyone. I think that's probably all we have time for questions, but the plan is to take all the questions that we didn't get to. So thank you for all of those. We'll respond to those in a newsletter or a follow-up with the slides, with the recording and answers to the questions here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Great work.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining.